it was like back in the day where you literally saw the flop pretty much all the time.
Yeah.
And it's like, how do you change that?
Well, I mean, once I learnt the rules, it was a pretty dramatic next home game. Where I was, what do you mean there's a pre-flop? We do betting, and what's funny is that very little actually changed once we introduced pre-flop. It's like, well, we'll all limp anyway.
Hi guys, and welcome back to the Cry Me the River podcast. Today we have a very special guest that's close to my heart. When I was writing this intro last night, I was actually thinking, how do I word the guest that's on our podcast today without those who know him? And it really got me thinking, I have been here before. I have definitely came up with these words, these thoughts. So I went onto Facebook and I scrolled. And the guest I have today won our largest ever high roller at the Poker Palace. And I actually wrote these sentiments, which are truer now today in the current climate than ever before. Today, I am honoured to be joined by Didier Guerin. He is somebody who is a cornerstone of not only just Australia poker, but what poker should mean to players in general. He is one of the kindest, most sweetest, purest human beings in a world that can be very sinister at times. It has never changed him. What many people may know is Didier was the first ever Poker Palace ambassador long before I ever hit the streets. So arguably, he's probably more of a face of the palace than I am myself. And since then, he has came a very long way. He's been in, he's been out, he's been in every scene. He started on the APL streets, then moved very quickly onto the Vegas APT streets, Aussie Millions. He is a face that went straight to the top and a face that lived and remained to this day as one of the most important people in Australia poker. And I am honoured today that he is my guest. So welcome, Didier. Welcome to our podcast.
Thank you so much. I like you too, by the way. I think you're giving me too much credit being the face of the Poker Palace, though. I think everyone knows what an amazing job you and Will and Rod have done. But I feel like out of the three of you, with all due respect, most people think of you as the face of Poker Palace these days. So with all due respect, I have to give you that one.
If this was a drinking game of like how quick in that somebody might think I've bribed somebody to big me up and knock somebody else down, this comes natural. Like naturally people actually do like me. But yeah, thank you, Dids. I think that's probably a very natural way to start for those who are listening who may not know. You were genuinely the first, correct me if I'm wrong, because I wasn't around. I was like 14 at the time, but you are the first Poker Palace ambassador, or among the first. And what age were you when you became an ambassador?
So I believe it was officially done in 2017, but we'd sort of been talking around 2016 areas. So I think I was 26, about there or thereabouts. Had been around for, I guess, eight years by that point. So I felt like I'd been around a while and that I was ready for it. And what a team, absolute superstars. Michael O'Grady, Craig Blight, and Adrian Attenborough, of course. Quite different poker players. I think people would agree.
A great bunch.
It's sort of different styles, and me as well. And that was who Frank wanted at the time to represent it. And being my first time, I'll be honest, like when I got the offer, it was a very me-centric focus thing. And I was just like, I want to be an ambassador. Mm-hmm. This would be really cool to do. And I think when I compare it to my new ambassadorship, I'm thinking a lot more about the Australian poker community and what my mission statement is to people with what I want to bring, I suppose. And I guess I'm happy enough with how I represented Poker Palace. There were certainly some fun times representing the brand internationally as well, actually, in Las Vegas, because I don't know if you know this. There's another poker palace in Las Vegas.
There's many, and someone's like, oh, like the one in like Missouri, and I'm like, I'm gonna say no on that one. Bosley Park in Missouri is a bit far away, but yeah, I'm aware that there are a few
I was
palaces.
like playing day 2 of something at the Venetian, and this like very old man came up to me. He's like, "Is that the poker palace downtown?" And I was like, "I just really want to say yes.
Yes.
I really want to say yes so much."
But you
But
got to
no,
add
it's
the
Australia.
accent in as well.
Yeah.
Downtown Western Sydney.
Yeah,
for
downtown
sure,
Western
for
Sydney,
sure.
yeah, slightly different to downtown Vegas.
A fun fact: we actually, those beautiful white patches that you had all the way back when, they are still our patches today.
Yeah, it's
They
amazing,
are-
isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. I interested that you touched on it. We're just gonna like jump right in. But I was talking to Will last night. As someone who started in the industry at 18 years of age, I was always super well aware that regardless of what company I was working for, I was a representative of that company on and off the felt. And sometimes that's exceptionally well, but other times it's not the best in the world, in the sense of some things can happen that can really put you in a, like an awkward spot. So I wonder, at, like you said, 8 years ago now, you're at that point in time, thriving career, and I can completely understand why you kind of jump headfirst into an ambassador role for your own brand. Were you hyper aware that obviously the complications that would come after in the palace, and even such then where other people's actions would impact you in a way? Do you think you have any lessons from that, or how does that change in your current ambassadorship? Or are you just so confident, as you should be, as who you are as a person, that you will bring about the right changes regardless of other people's actions or what may come? Because it's a hard industry to keep everybody happy in. Even if you're the best of souls, you're not going to get it quite right every time. So being an ambassador, it actually carries a hell of a lot of weight. And how have you...
Yeah. It's a really fascinating question, actually. Thanks for asking me. Yeah, I mean, I think with the issues that Poker Palace specifically faced at the time, like, no one would really ever associate with Adrian, Michael, or Craig, or myself.
Yes.
And I'm very thankful that the poker community, especially in Australia, are like pretty tight knit. Like, people talk, and I think they're pretty aware of like what is the responsibility of a brand or an operator as opposed to an ambassador. And I am very thankful for that, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
You know, I've always felt like over the last, I guess, what's that, 8 or 9 years now, between Palace or with APT, people just always come up to me and they give me the nicest messages of support when they ask me what I'm doing and what I think I can do and what's obviously not within my role. And I think that serves to, I guess, the intelligence of the the Australian poker community, but also the tight-knitness. You know, maybe if it was a global brand, it would be very hard for people to filter what is and isn't your responsibility. But yeah, I'd say I'm extraordinarily lucky that we have the people that we do in the community, because I've always felt, I think you said it there at the end, like they can discern that for themselves, what is and isn't an ambassador's responsibility. You know, I am approaching this one differently in the sense that I ask myself, what can I do for the community to leave like maybe something like a lasting impact? And, you know, the giving side of that is, sorry. Did we tell everyone we've started on these already?
Yeah,
Okay.
No, that's no surprise to anybody at
It's
home.
like 7:30 in the morning. I can't believe
I
she's
just
doing
get, like,
this to
called
me. You know,
out.
there's gonna be a few mic whackings. But yeah, when I look at APT, for example, like I channel that into State of Origin. And when I look at how State of Origin went this year, having the responsibility over that, I think it went fantastically.
Yeah.
And to have the caliber of people and players that we had attend that event was a real mark of what I'd like to actually credit as love for the game. You know, like I really
I don't know. I'd like to put like a little tiny pin in that and like big you up for a bit here, because not unbeknownst to people who don't know me personally, I am very good at my job, but I have no business being in this industry because I am like completely oblivious to the big names. And when I went back through your Facebook to do research here, you've some pretty big dogs in your corner. I mean, as you should do, because you're just so, I'm not lying, like a genuine person, but you have some seriously big names. And I think when the State of Origin came out from a competitive brand, and friendly competitor for sure, I'd only wish you good things.
Ally.
An ally. When it suits me, when I'm an ally.
Yeah. Oh god, yeah.
When it suits
An
me.
ally, but we'll talk about it
But
later.
we'll talk about it later.
We'll figure out
But
the details, ally.
For sure, as a competitor, we
Yeah.
were looking at it, and in even me, who like big names, I'm definitely more of a tournament director, but big names don't necessarily phase me all that much. However, you see the lineups, and you're like, oh, Didier's doing bits here. Like Didier is coming and leaving no crumbs. Your State of Origin lineups were exceptional, and then when you sit back and you think, holy shit, like they're his friends. Like you did I think it went really well regardless. We had obviously a close friend who played, and he would never soften the blow with me for sure, but he was like, it was a lot of fun, and this is not a guy who like loves to crack all that much. So when he was saying to me, the atmosphere was great, everything was great about it. Regardless of what transpired thereafter, I really hope that you take the moment in this industry to celebrate the wins. I've talked to you about this personally before. It's hard when you take on a more involved role to try and not have the good moments overshadowed by negativity that may come, whether warranted or whether not. There were certain instances that were not warranted leading up to it. But you should celebrate that win. You should really celebrate that win. I think the State of Origin, having those teams and what you pulled off, Didier, I hope you look back and you think, okay, it's players will go to a tournament, but players went to that tournament for you.
Oh, I mean, I hope so. I know the ones that really did make the time. You know, when I look at Jonathan Karamelikis, like my first poker coach, like how lucky am I to have a person like him in my life rather than the other way around, I think. And for him to basically unretire, start playing online in all the week. You know what Jono did? Like, this is actually just so Jono, because there's probably a lot of people who, from I guess my generation or when they were starting or older, would know exactly who he is. But there's a lot of people maybe exactly in your generation who don't know him as well.
Can we just
would rock up
say
and win.
he does not know me, but can we just say his alias, because
Monster Dong?
Okay.
XX Monster Dong, XX. Why, what's wrong with that? Very standard online.
Exceptional name, but like for years people would talk about
It's
Monster
the
Dong.
Yeah, Monster Dong.
And as a female, I'm like, is it? But for years,
I think it's worked out well for him in that sense.
Yeah. And then other people would call him John DeCamerlakis, and it genuinely took me like 6 years in to be like, oh, they're the same person. But yeah, so he's obviously a good friend of yours.
Yeah, he was my first poker coach. I actually met Daniel Nielsen a lick before him at ANZ PT Sydney in 2011, I think, and might be 2012, one of the two. And I was asking him the question of whether I should get coaching, and I was between Brendan Ruby and Jonathan Karamelikis. And I met Brendan, and then I spoke to Daniel about it, and I got Daniel's opinion on the issue. And I was very convinced to go with Jonathan, and I'm so glad.
And the rest is public history if you search well enough on
public
Facebook.
history.
Or 2+2.
And just to have someone like him so supportive throughout the years, you know, both when he was playing more, I just was always gobsmacked by how good he was, but also just a blessed person, you know, the kind of like, this is exactly what he does. So he's like, yeah, I'll play online, you know, a couple of sessions, maybe to just warm up for this whole State of Origin thing if I'm going to captain South Australia. I'm like, yeah, okay. He's like, what should I play online? I'm like, oh, there's these like 2 1Ks on GG Poker you might want to play. There's a 630 on ACR or Blackchip Poker, you know, just see how he goes. He's like, oh yeah, I'll have a flick. And he just cold sends me the screenshot of his first place for 150,000 USD the next day. And I'm
it's
just
like riding a bike.
Never lose it.
It's riding a bike.
You know, like some people are really just
Gifted.
connected to the game, you know. But yeah, more broadly about State of Origin, I wanted to maybe tap into what you were alluding to at the start with, you know, some negative press. And I actually liked it in a sense because it's very rare you have uniquely positive feedback about anything in my experience, let alone in poker. So we obviously had lots of great stories coming out. There was people at WPT Australia playing satellites all the way up to the 20K, being like, oh wow, should this person be in the team? Oh, I would have gone this guy, or if or this person over that person. And I was really excited about that. And then of course you had, I think, people coming out with their grievances online. I got messages personally about, how despicable the selection process was. And other people asking for more representation was a big issue, obviously, online. And I looked at all of that and I just tried to separate the people who I thought had a very reasonable point and the people who were just kind of like there for the attention or trolling. And I think there were people on both sides of that line on both issues. But ultimately, I guess when you're trying to hype something up, if I'm being
controversy sells.
Exactly right. So I mean, it's not like we intended to have those controversies, but I think that kind of helped State of Origin at least a little bit in a way.
Oh, for sure. It was all over everyone's
like people are
newsfeed.
talking about what's going on. So yeah, I mean, I would never set expectations for anything about it just being unanimously well received. Again, let alone in poker where people want to, sort of give you their feedback about more things than most. Like, you've probably got this, you might have better stories than me, but when the first APT schedule came out for the series, I had some inclination to message some of the people that didn't like some of the things that they saw. And obviously a lot of it wasn't within my control, but I really just wanted to learn, like, what does a low stakes player want to see who's complaining, for example? And I got some really good feedback. There was a gentleman in Canberra, I won't mention anyone's name, but he was just like, yeah, maybe just really small guarantee here or something like that. Would just encourage us to come. And I'm like, that's great feedback. Thank you for being so open and constructive. And I really appreciated that. And then there was people just telling us to ban certain nationalities from the events. And I was just like, well, okay, thank you for your feedback. And you just have to obviously know what is legitimate feedback and what isn't. So it's all been a learning process, and it continues to be a learning process within the lens of being an ambassador. But like I said, I think the most important thing is really how much I value people's understanding of how this all works. And poker players or poker enthusiasts who come to these events are pretty aware of what is and isn't your responsibility.
Yeah. That's great. I think Australia is still blessed, like, to a certain degree, where that sense of community is so there.
Yeah.
I would say with regards to when it came to picking teams, I mean, I've had a lot of conversations with you behind the scenes where it's crazy because I just turned 29, but I feel like I'm like 80 because of a wealth of experience behind me where the tougher times, you don't learn anything if everything went easy. You just don't. You don't come out a better person. You don't come out a more well-rounded person. You only learn it in difficult times. And for me, it's crazy that you would say that because with something where you're picking a team, some of these feelings are inevitably going to be hurt. And it's hard because although I can't relate to a State of Origin thing, funnily enough, when APO was founded or Australia Poker Open was founded, one of the hardest, genuinely hardest moments for us was Will, Rod and I picking who our ambassadors was. And it's important I bring it up on this podcast because it was really, really hard. Obviously, our ambassadors are Bear Perry and Rahman Kassam. But if you were to sit a list down of the three of us and who we wish could represent our brand, the list is hundreds deep. Like, it's actually truly hundreds deep. But one name that came up time and time again to the point where it actually made us, like, uncomfortable, and to the degree where obviously I took you aside and talked about it personally, was you, Didier, because it just seemed, in an almost strange way, semi unjust to have you represent the Poker Palace predating the three of us, by the way. Maybe not Rod, I mean, he played, but predating would certainly Will and I, and somebody who was so loyal to the brand. I mean, one point of just how good of a person Didier would be is, I'll never forget it. And it's like a cool segue because you get to big yourself up here as well, like, for the story. But you played at 25k last year, which poetically you now represent that brand. So all good comes of it. But you played a 25k TLPT event and you won with Didda, who is, sorry, for anybody who doesn't know, I'll let Will repronounce his name.
Didda.
Oh, that's who you meant. Sorry, yeah.
Yes. And you took it upon yourself to you wore a Palace patch. You were not paid. He was not sponsored. He did absolutely nothing other than show unwavered love and support towards our brand. And it was so uncomfortable. I remember having a conversation because APO was genuinely just after launching. And we were just about to announce, obviously, our ambassadors in the weeks coming. And I remember seeing that, and we all felt, for lack of a better word, fucking shit. That you were such a loyal person to our brand. And at that point in time, we had to make the difficult decision of not choosing you as an ambassador. And the reason for it is, how blessed are we that when it came to Sydney, we have so many people who are so we love them so much.
Yeah.
They talk about us in every room, every corner. I mean, from every single stakes, like in every walk of life, you have people. And it was just, if we choose one, how do we not choose 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6? So Rahman was easy because he's Europe.
Yeah.
And Bert was easy because, in a way, because he was Gold Coast and he was Asia. So
It was strategic.
It was
I think
strategic.
It made sense, and that's what the word that you used to me when you explained it.
Strategic. When it
And-
comes to homegrown, where you're close, and I think for you, Didier,
Yeah.
someone who's been in the industry, I don't know, how many years?
Well,
total?
since I was running away from law school, it was about 2010, towards the end of 2010. So probably took a year before I wanted to go pro by the end of 2011. And that was when I had my first cash in Macau.
You know, that's 13 years. So I think everybody who is watching it from the other side, you just need to realize Didier is so loved in every room.
And the grays are
the
starting to
amount
come
of
through now,
people-
you know.
But like the amount of people you've met in those 13 years,
Yeah,
that
like,
when it comes to picking a team,
Yeah, absolutely.
it is not personal by any
yeah.
way, shape or form. It's not, like, it's not Didier's fault that his best friend wins 150 grand online playing once. Like, that's not his fault that he's so but there's so many people that when you took on the role of being an ambassador, I would say guys, we just can't always get it right.
Yeah, no, I think it makes sense. And the truth was, I was already in conversations with APT at the time when
Yeah.
you messaged me as well. So if anything, it was just
Oh, so you were snaking me. Okay.
No. You
That makes me
messaged me and I said, like, I appreciate the way that you worded it and how. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, to that point,
No,
I've
but we
always,
were,
There was a
yes.
tournament that ran when you had a 2,500 once of a very similar or exactly the same price point, where the players felt awful because they had to choose, and you guys won the choosing contest that day. But I think it was a lesson, at least for me, in seeing how brands need to cooperate and brands need to not run over each other with dates.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the schedule is so packed that it actually is inevitable, I've learned. You can't have everything you want.
Some
because-
people don't want a slice of the cake. They want like 5 cheesecakes in a row.
That's true. Yeah. If they want 5 cheesecakes, then maybe they.
Yeah.
I'll choose my words carefully.
Yeah.
But look, where possible, it has to be really important for the
Yeah.
brands to cooperate. But I wanted to talk about, just Ray and Bert briefly. I met Bert, and we've never really gone deep in the same tournaments. We haven't played that much together, but I met him about a week before Warnie passed away, and we played for the first time together in like a 3.5K or a 3,300. It was like a WPT Leagues at Southport Sharks. It was after one of the WPT series at Gold Coast. And what I've always noticed about Bert is that, I hope this comes out the wrong way, but sorry, I hope this comes out the right way, rather. It doesn't come out the wrong way.
I hope you take this to the heart, Bert Perry. You
Oh
feel
my
it
God,
in your
these hard-rated
chest.
things. What is he about to say about
Yes.
Bert? Oh my God, let's do. No, is that he has a lot of positive traits that I would like to hope that I exhibit when I'm at the poker table. He genuinely likes to be there and talk with people. He has a very just warm and kind-hearted vibe. And I noticed that immediately because he just started having a yarn with Warnie. And, Warnie's there with a ciggy parked behind each ear, talking about his Airbnb and some properties. And Bert's just getting into it. He's getting some just juicy info from
Yeah,
Warnie.
man, cool.
I was just listening. I'm like, wow, okay, he's, wants to really tell us about all these properties. Let's make the popcorn. And yeah, I'm not just yanking your chain because he's your ambassador, but I've always noticed this from him over the last couple of years since then that I've got to know him more. And he's just such a lovely person, and he's a great poker player. You were talking about the community, and when I think about some of the guys that travel and play the big stakes, he's part of that Josh McCulley, Didda kind of group, Jen, and they're just wonderful people. I would trust all the money in the world with those 4 names who I just mentioned, because that's what you want in the poker community. You want people who. It's not about representing Australia. It's just having this trust in people as being good people outside of good poker players. And I think we are lucky for the most part in Australia to have those kinds of people. But unfortunately, Ray's a terrible choice. What were you guys doing?
Listen,
honestly?
Ray was like
seriously.
nepotism at its finest. I mean,
I'm kidding,
he's
of course.
right. Look,
He's underpaid.
you
I had to
know
say
what?
something negative after all that.
It's so funny that you say like Australia is Bert, right? Okay, but Europe is Ray. Okay, he runs to stakes there because Europe, there's no community. It's every man for himself. Like the reason we're in the European Union is so we stop warring with each other. Legit, like Ray is great for Europe because he's like, I have an angle. Let me tell you. Have you heard of Australia in April? Because I have a crypto tip.
I
if
noticed
you'd
you
like
sitting
to
with those
come.
like high stakes British pros.
Yes,
You know, at the horseshoe.
yes.
Yeah.
Or
Ray
in
is
Vegas.
always, you know, when
Yeah.
you like, this is so random, but have you seen Hamilton yet?
The play?
Yes.
No, I haven't actually. I've heard
Okay.
it's fantastic.
It's
Yeah.
it's so good. I won't go on a tangent because Will warned me, but it's so good. But Hamilton, there's like a scene, like a very obviously famous scene in Hamilton where he says, "I wish I could be in the room where it happened." Raman was in every room. He was involved in every conversation that
Maybe
ever
too many
needed to be
rooms.
had. Every single room Ray is in, and I think Ray's choice actually, I'm making it sound super strategic, but I'll go like semi-soft for a minute. Ray's choice was based on the endless love and loyalty Ray has for both Will and I. In Europe,
Trust
people
again.
are way more unforgiving. In a weird way, like be very careful, Lauren, what you wish for, but in a weird way, I find myself consistently saying to anyone who will listen, being like, this wouldn't happen back home. Like people would not get away with this shit. But like Europe is way less forgiving. And to have somebody on the ground who, when our name just gets floated in these conversations, being like, no, actually I know those people and they are like good people. Their heart and their intentions are in the best place, was actually why Ray was chosen. I'm not going to be sat at those tables. They're his tables.
Yeah.
Because they're usually baccarat tables in the high stakes room, let's be honest. And I don't punt enough. But he's at those tables quite frequently.
Yeah.
Actually, he's not. Like, if his family are watching this, I'm just joking. But he's at those tables, and it's so important to have somebody in Europe. Integrity is probably all that matters in Europe, and you don't get second, third, fourth, fifth chances.
No.
In Europe, and I'll be the first to hold my hands up and say, God, like for an industry I complain about a hell of a lot, I'm very lucky that there were second, third, fourth, fifth chances. Because if there wasn't, the Palace, it wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be with you. So that's those ambassadors.
And
But
look what it's become, you know.
I know.
You know, looking up at Daltone House, it had a
Dalton.
different...
El Daltone.
Sorry, am I putting the
El
Aussie accent on this?
Daltone.
How do I say it?
El Daltoni House.
We just call it Dalton, or maybe we're wrong. Maybe
No,
we're
it's
right.
it's definitely Dalton
Well, we need to
House.
figure this out before the next
It's
APO.
definitely Dalton House, but in
Dalton, yeah.
future I will only be referring to El
Daltone.
Daltoni.
I was going to say, just talking about the circles that people are in, like I feel one of the reasons you're so valuable as an ambassador is you're kind of in the, you are in the high stakes circles. We're talking, you mentioned Jonathan, Camaracas, you have Cale Burns in there, other names I'm probably forgetting, but you seem to be the most accessible. Like how did it all start in terms of how did you all become friends? And then sort of, you're the one person that anyone from mid to low stakes, everyone's had a conversation with Didier, whereas from my knowledge, I don't know them very well, but not everybody's had a conversation with Cale or Corey or whoever it might be, who's sort of keeping their higher circles at higher stakes, but you seem to be accessible to all.
Yeah. That's really nice of you to say. I think it probably comes from that story that I alluded to earlier, meeting Nielsen and meeting Jono. Those were probably, I think, along with some people like, Aaron Benton got me originally sort of networking and meeting people. He won the second APPT Sydney in like 2008. I think Jono won the first one. Or it went Grant, Jono and Aaron, or some order of that. And those were absolutely massive tournaments. And I think it kicked off from there. I like to think that I, just always tried to talk to people at the table and get to know them, and not necessarily just, ask them about poker, but just get to know them as human beings. There's a couple of people who grew up in my generation that I'm extremely fortunate to call at least colleagues, but, it's difficult to, I suppose, command like your own share of the achievements when you're growing up in a generation with Michael Adamo, Cale Burns, Alex Linsky. I suppose people like Adrian a couple of years below me. Corey would be in my generation. Those guys just not only the best players in Australia, but they're obviously at a world-class standard. In the last few years, people have commonly described Adamo as the best player in the world, and I'm really proud of that. Like just to have been there and see them grow up. I remember Michael was playing like really small stuff online, and it's kind of ironic. I have him tagged with my fish tag on PokerStars. We were playing like a satellite, and he jammed like 22 big blinds from under the gun with like ace 5 suited or something, and I was like, I'm not sure if this guy's gonna make it. And then
it's funny you say this because
and now he's like the best player in the world.
Oh no, it's so funny you say this.
Adrian also has the yellow tag, Knights G. Yeah, so I mean, I didn't have a strong sense of how they were going to develop.
Oh yeah, so it's
You've
so
set this up
funny.
perfectly for a
You've
Facebook
set yourself up. So the first game I'm going to
What
play
have I
with you
done?
today is, who was Didier referring to in this post? This post went up on the 9th of November, 2012. And in the words of you said,
Oh God, I'm so terrified.
small blind leads 13k, under the gun folds. I
Like
tank.
it's a hand history.
Yeah, it's a
We're
good one.
really young. I'm so sorry,
Basically,
everyone.
I'm going to leave out parts of it, but basically, this is the only guy in this whole tournament that I can pretty easily justify not flatting. He's shown a massive propensity to overvalue hands and has
you
value
dig now
bet
too.
similar to this with weaker holdings. Presume he snap calls with king off, honestly. Double cooler all the time. Sigh. Who
I hate
was
young
Didier?
I hate
Who
the way he
was
talks.
this is a good one.
who was Didier referring to in
Did you
this
say
post?
2012
2012.
and November?
You've spotted the fish in the tournament.
You've
can't
spotted
believe
the
you lost
fish.
the pot to him. Double caller because you've lost the pot.
Oh no. He was the only guy in the tournament that I can pretty easily justify flatting here.
Pretty easily.
Maybe one of the best. Maybe one of the best WSOP folds of all time.
Oh, was it James Obbs?
It was James
Oh my God.
Ding ding ding. But I will give props that you tagged him at least when you talked about in a post, and you said sigh. Sigh. So I think this leads to like a very, very funny. Congratulations, James, on winning WPT. By the way, I'm the latest
Decent year for him.
WPT.
Decent year for him. Yeah.
See, he still can't give you the achievements. Decent year for
Decent
you,
year.
not decent
Well, no, he won the
career.
bracelet as well, and
you were on his
when
rail, so
I was
You
on
were-
his rail, yeah.
You were on his
It
rail.
was awesome to see that, actually. Like
only
he's,
he knew.
oh,
He
God.
did. He got the
Yeah.
tag. At least he
Yeah.
got the tag.
gonna be a
He got
great
the
one.
call out. Like, it's so
Oh my
funny
God.
when we were
What are we
reading
going
it.
to say about that?
And it made me laugh
Mixed
so
games
much.
play. Mixed games play.
Yeah.
Like, hold them fish.
It made me laugh so much because it's like struck, like, it, you know me, I just always think deeper. And I think a question I wanted to ask you specifically in the most like polite way, because you have a wealth of achievement behind you. You're an exceptional poker player by your own right. When you started so long ago, it seems like, correct me if I'm wrong, did you guys start in the era of just when poker kind of really, really blew up
Yeah.
in Australia?
Well, I think the boom is Moneymaker, right?
Yeah.
Which was 2004, I
Right.
think. And then, of course, the relative poker boom is Joe Hashem
Yeah.
winning, which is 2005. Oh, maybe Moneymaker was 03, Raymer was 04, and Hashem was 05, if I recall now. So 05 in Australia was the real big boom. I finished high school in 2009. So finishing at that time, went straight to uni at law school and just discovered like PokerStars.tv. And I was just watching like the big game and started watching different poker shows. There was a website called Drag the Bar, which was a reference to the online betting bar that you drag when you're racing.
Oh, okay.
And it was like $8 US a month or something. And because I was at university, like doing like my law school notes and stuff like that, I started going to Drag the Bar every day to do like a video. And I'd
So
just be
you
doing
didn't
like
do the bar exam, you just decided.
well, that's the thing.
Close
I have
enough.
my contract law finale, and like I have my folder that's like yay big for it over the term, and I just have my Drag the Bar notes, which were like way bigger, and I was like, maybe I should give this a shot, I guess, at the end. And it was so accessible because we had Full Tilt, we had PokerStars,
Yeah.
we had literally the Nike and the Adidas of online poker. Supporting everything. It was like deposit will give you 500 USD. Like party poker were even more insane. I think it was like, we'll just give you 500 USD.
Yeah,
Don't
yeah,
even
yeah.
worry about the
Please come
deposit.
play with
You
us.
just please come and you look at some of the documentaries
times.
of that timeline, like 2 months, 2 million, and the guys who were at the highest stakes on like party poker, and there's those quotes where they're like, we were just thinking about buying islands because, you know, it was so easy. And they were playing limit hold'em as well, not even no limit,
The
you
old
know,
school game.
just, you know, just playing 4 or 5 tables of that and just printing money, literally because no one knew how to play. Crazy times. And to see how that translated live was amazing in so many different ways, because you had these big fields, obviously like the Sydney and the Melbourne events. And then you'd go to like Canberra and you're like, why is there this dead stack there? And they're like, he's from Latvia. He won 4 seats. He's not coming. You know? And you're like, oh, okay. He just
did
really
not
wanted
know.
those PokerStars
He's
dollars.
like,
and he knew those
missed-
Canberra satellites were the spot. He could
No.
afford to whip
found
one.
them.
and just
He
keep coming
didn't.
more,
He like
you know?
misread the flags, and he was like a lot of people in. I did it. Okay, I'll call myself out in APO, where it was like so many of my field were from Austria, like AUS, and he's like, Austria's pretty close to Latvia, and then it's like, no, mate, you're going to Australia, Canberra of all places, Australia, and he's like, fuck no, I'm not going to Australia. His stack's just flying out. He's like, let me know in Austria to run it next time.
It was crazy, right? Sometimes they'd actually come. I remember Michael Kanan, my dear friend, we went to Queenstown, and the Latvian guy came this time. The Latvian guy's like,
Still
Queenstown
came.
watching the
looks
satellites.
pretty good. I go to Queenstown. And he's there, and he like opens under the gun. Kanan proceeds to 3-bet, 5-bet all in with King Jack suited, and the guy just calls with aces, and he's like, just like, my goodness, you know? Like, he just says the word, my goodness.
Can I just
That's a
confirm?
real shade to throw immediately.
Is it this Michael Cannon?
So he's tagged in that. That's my friend Cameron Bissett.
Oh, it's
That
not.
was my
So
roommate.
different.
Yeah, no, I guess he's probably removed himself.
Is that
That's a
you though,
terrible-
Didier?
That's a terrible photo of whoever
I
that is.
mean,
I'll tell you that.
I'm gonna insert it like here
Oh God.
for everybody to see.
Yeah.
But
Look, we've all had to do some growing and some maturing and understand fashion, at least in some sense. But you know,
I don't know.
not a
I was
huge
pretty born with it.
improvement.
But, but it's funny you should say that, because I was saying to Will, when it comes about like poker in Australia in general, Australia have had it rough. I mean, poker in Australia is like the toxic relationship where like it was so great at the beginning and you were like hooked, and then it just decided, oh, it's getting worse from here on out. I mean, how was it you said you studied law, and then you obviously were hooked on this, and you figured you're quite good at it.
Yeah.
And obviously, I'm assuming your focus kind of shifted, which is so ironic, because I don't know if you know this, but I'm probably going to say this in every episode, but I have a law degree.
Either way, I have a lot of
I
it.
have
Oh, it's
a, I
impressive,
have,
yeah.
Didier's probably
I was
heard
there
me.
for 2 semesters, so you got a lot on me.
I have a full law degree. Didier's probably heard it in rulings where I'm like arguing about like the big blind not being out, and I'm like, listen, I have a law degree. I use it all the time. 'Cause
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance.
It's the only time I've ever used it, because I feel like,
Yeah.
I don't know,
I
there's
think it's
some
good.
sort
You
of
have that
trajectory.
authority that when you come over, people just respect you. And,
Yeah.
you know, there's some TDs that don't command that level of
Yeah.
respect, who aren't necessarily doing anything wrong, or
No.
they're not bad at, like, the rest of their roles. But you really want someone who you feel like they know what they're talking about, and you always know what rules you're talking about,
Mm.
and you know if they're TDA or non-TDA, and you're so good with the specificity of those. But you just, I think your demeanor is so different when I'm with you socially. You're such a lovely person, but then you have the ability to make that switch and just sort of command a lot of authority.
What
on
a
the
way to
floor.
call me out. So I'm a lovely person, and then I turn into a raging bitch.
No, it's not.
Yeah,
that you're
no,
not,
it's true, I've
you're,
heard it.
You're very professional.
Yeah.
You're not a raging bitch. You're you're professional.
Good terminology.
You know. I hope you're not self-conscious about that, because I don't think anyone.
No,
thinks
I
that
love
about
it. I wear it like a badge of honor.
Oh, yeah.
For real. I'm like, I literally say to people all the time, if you not hear me say, like, don't you know
The accent
I'm
also
crazy?
helps as well. You know, it gives you the
Yeah.
attention. You know?
They
It's
look
like,
around,
oh my
they're
God,
like,
this is a
McGregor?
Yeah.
In the ringside? What? But
I'm in trouble, and she's from another country.
yes,
you know?
it's
like, yeah.
great. I love it. But so obviously I'm guessing you said you completed 2 semesters. And
Yeah,
then,
2 semesters. So that was 2010, basically, and then
Yeah.
left at the end of that. And I think I'm still technically deferred. I hope they're not expecting me back. But yeah, then the online streets were really good, and
Yeah.
I just enjoyed going to play live tournaments in amongst playing online cash for the most part. So I was getting sort of the mix of like the deep stack and learning a bit of the more short stack stuff, and ran pretty well. I think in my first year playing live tournaments, I made a final table in Macau, and then was 3rd on Player of the Year on the ANZ PT Player of the Year. My dear friend Michelle Nunu actually won that year, and that was also how I sort of met him. And then in a heartbeat and snap,
Yeah.
woke up one morning and the Department of Justice was all over the page instead of my full tilt credentials and login. And like, I won't lie, I had like probably like 95% of my net worth on the website. And, you know, if I consider like the bumps in the road or the dark moments in my life, like that's absolutely one of them, because I think like when you take the path that I did with leaving law school, you want to prove to your parents more than anything that
That
you
it
can
was
do
worth it. Yeah.
And, you know, like any parents, they're just going to hear gambling, especially when you're quitting a law or deferring a law degree. They're just going to hear gambling. It's not poker. They don't know what
No.
that is. So
They
they're
can't
perfectly
understand it.
well within their right to be like, what
Yeah.
are you doing? Don't do this. And then after showing like a modicum of success, there's not like a support, but there's like, okay, maybe you can
Maybe
do,
this is
do
a
this
life.
thing.
That's a life. It's not a
Yeah.
hobby. It's not a. In many ways, it's not a vice. It's an actual.
Yeah. So with online poker getting banned, it almost like drove this like wedge in the progress.
Made it more
Like,
illegal. Made
well,
it more sinister.
yeah, exactly. Like, how can you explain that to someone who's
No.
not necessarily integrated into poker without negative connotations?
No.
Because even if you haven't done anything wrong and you've been trying and working, it all just reflects back on you, because ultimately, end of the day, don't leave all your money on an online poker site. Should be pretty obvious in these days, and I don't think anyone would do it these days because of the lesson that we learned. And
But can I just table that for like
broadly.
literally 2 seconds?
sure, yeah.
That is such an important point. If we have anybody watching this from like back home, like where Will and I are from, Ireland, England, that is not a well-known fact in the sense of, to my knowledge, I'm sure there are other countries, but I don't know of a country that has happened to. So like, I think of Ireland right now, and poker is like obviously booming. Online is incredible. My brother, if he's watching this, everybody knows if Christmas Day, like my brother's not available on Sundays or Mondays, Christmas is nothing, and he plays online religiously. And when you say everyone would know not to leave their net worth or even a large chunk of it online because you've learned a lesson, you know, back over home, like at home, when I know I've been approached by brands with APO where they're wanting to sponsor it, and then they are big brands, and then they're like, oh, what do you mean poker's illegal online in Australia? Like, what? So it's not a common knowledge. It's not a thing that people are like, I'm sure people now have learned from what happened in Australia. Most people are floored by the fact that Australia is such a flourishing country, the home of Joe Hasham, like the home of the Aussie Millions. I mean, come on. The home of no online.
It's insane.
It's-
And no tax treaty either when we go to Vegas. And I find that, in terms of having a world
Right.
champion, insane. It shows
Yeah.
you the disconnect that we have between our government and poker players, unfortunately. There's
Yeah.
been plenty of efforts to get it back up. But, you know, when I've had the rare opportunities to speak to some people who are loosely affiliated with political campaigns in just my area in Wentworth, they've said, look, I'll be honest with you. Tell me a way to support you where I don't seem pro gambling, because it sounds
Yes.
exactly like the pokies. And I was like,
Yeah.
you know what? Like, fair enough. Like, if
First three letters are the
that
same.
if the party on the right or the left is going to shred you for being pro poker, I can actually conceivably understand why you'd never support this.
Right, but okay, semi-controversial, but can you? Because for a country, which I love, by the way, obviously I love Australia, but for a country who is so anti-gambling, maybe take your pokies out of the pub before you kind of
Well,
ban
I think that's what we need to do. Like, we need to reduce the amount of pokies, or somehow convince everyone to start calling them slots machines, like
Yeah.
in the other parts of the world,
Yeah.
because then we'd have some differentiation between what we're doing. I
yeah.
think that might be honestly the most hopeful path that we have
For
at this
sure.
moment, because
Poker is
you look
not
at what
the
happened,
same.
and it was basically an accident
Yeah.
with regard to the Australian legislation
Right.
and how it all changed. It's very sad that this was initially an attempt to stop people betting on online
Yeah.
sports during the games. That's how online poker got banned, because they were worried about that. Like,
Oh, true. I never. Do you know what's
Yeah.
strange? I'm probably ignorant on my behalf. I actually never knew what. I never asked why, because, like I said, working in the industry, I'll even openly admit it. Like in Ireland, all the boys in my family play poker, which is how I got into it. But even so, like when I started to work in a casino when I was 18, everyone would be like, "Oh, it's the same." I've been in the industry 10 years. Playing poker is not the same. It is, you guys are some of the most intelligent And I think of all careers, dedicated. Like, it is not fun. It's not fun going on down. Like, there are fun moments for sure, but there are dark moments. There are moments where you just break for endless time. And to stay dedicated, when they removed online poker, and like you said, it was one of the darkest times of your life, which is so shit. I was actually going to ask, every poker player's career has a pinnacle, like, pinch me moment, but everyone for sure has 10 like, what am I doing here moments. When they took that away from you and you essentially lost, but everything overnight, and then worse, you're dealing with the grief, and then you kind of have to justify to your parents and your friends, and I'm sure that you probably got a lot of pushback where it's like, okay, well, it's just a hobby. Like, what's the big deal? Just pick something else to do. But it's not. You had dedicated hundreds of hours of study. What led you to, did you have a moment where you're like, okay, you know what, maybe this is not for me? Or were you still like, okay, I'm going to flip it mostly entirely onto live? Or how did you bounce back from that? How did you keep your love of poker after that day?
It's funny. I never blamed the game itself.
Okay.
I never had any ill will toward poker for what happened. I just thought all these scumbags at the top at Full Tilt, and obviously the other websites as well, like Ultimate Bet, and the people who knew were just like these people that were either turning a blind eye or just not caring about us. And I guess that meant that my desire to still keep getting better hadn't been inhibited. And I just went to asking around, like, if anyone wanted to stake me. That was my approach at the time. I had like my week of darkness where I'm like, it's all over. And, you know, got up and realized I actually just want to keep playing poker, which was nice because it meant that I knew that I was going to have to be realistically, if I wanted to pull this off, dropping down in stakes. So eventually got in touch with Random Chew, Stephen Chew, who most people know is one of the funniest people online. And honestly, like, I think these days he's a pretty good shot to be in the conversation as the best online MTT player that Australia has. Plenty of great players in that conversation, but he might be mine. And you know, at that period, he was sort of like learning, like, you know, to take on horses as well, and I was learning to be staked. And I'm not sure if either of us did a very good job at either of our roles, if I'm very honest. I was at a stage in my life where I was in my, you know, sort of like mid-20s and wanting to party a lot, and study didn't really exist before, like Pio Solver and GTO Wizard and all of these things. It was really just like talking to your friends in like Skype. Maybe you had a study group.
That's a terrible way of playing the hand.
Yeah, it's a fold pre. It's always fold pre was the 2+2 one at the time.
No, actually, according to you, which I found is so sick, I need to bring this up.
Am I about to burn
So
James
I
off
have, like,
again?
No.
This is your entry into
People are
poker.
safe here, but I was like fascinated to know that you were featured in a book, and like it's such a cool part. It's actually a poker book. Before I announced the name, you probably should have changed that, but it's called Real Grinders, and then it goes on to say how to play poker for a living by Ashton Cartwright. And it says, Didier, the question they asked you was, when did you start playing poker and what did you think of it? And you told a story about when you were 18 and you had a friend come and he had won like $200 in like what he referred to as a home game in Byron Bay. And I'm pretty sure a home game in Byron Bay is like people sitting on a beach, like chilled, like, I don't know, using rocks as chips or something. I don't know, but he won $200 in a home game. And you just told the funniest story about how you and your friends believed that you had to flap pre and you guys saw every flop. And you know what's so crazy? That's how I remember poker. I remember, like, I had like family games.
Pre-flop stuff.
Yes, I
Let's see
remember.
who makes the best hand.
Yeah, when we had like family Christmas games and stuff, I'm pretty sure we were all there for the flop. Like, I'm like 5, like playing with like my little dolls, and I'm like, yeah, I'll call that raise. We'll see the 3 cards. But it was like back in the day where you literally saw the flop pretty much all the time.
Yeah.
And it's like, how do you change that?
Well, I mean, once I learned the rules, it was a pretty dramatic
That's what you
next
used to win.
home
You
game.
used to
Where I
see
was,
the flop every hand.
what do you mean there's a pre-flop? We do betting, and you know what's funny is that very little actually changed once we introduced
No.
pre-flop. It's like, well, we're all limp anyway,
Yeah.
you know. But at least we were limping. Yeah, you know, you ask yourself questions like 10 years later. I'm like, Still don't care about pre-flop. Why did I send this hand all in? But yeah, no, it was my friend Callum coming back from Byron Bay, where he was, I think, working, and came and showed us all at our friend's apartment where we were hanging out one night, just how to play. And I sort of had a loose interest in it, and then I saw it on ESPN like a couple months later, and it was the 2009 main event final table, which Joe Catter won. But the big thing about that was that Phil Ivey had made the final table.
Right.
And that was like all the big press. And I was like, who's this guy who they keep calling the Tiger Woods equivalent of poker? Like, he's so good.
Mate, but he looks so much like Tiger Woods.
Especially back then as well. Like the shaved look.
He
you know,
has
really,
the
like,
whole
cat.
persona.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the guy just had a swagger about him. And I think he folded jacks pre-flop against queens on that FT. And that was where I was like, man, this guy's like Superman. He's got the X-ray vision. And
Right, yeah,
that was,
yeah.
I think, what got me mentally and intellectually stimulated about it. I was like, oh my God, why didn't he just go all in? So, yeah, it's very basic, obviously, when you compare it to these days in 2026. I'm like, well, the solver would do it every time, you know? This isn't easy.
Yeah.
You're learning about what makes sense when you have no idea what the game is and stuff like that. So it's good to tap into what actually interested you in the first place, because all of us have these like troughs where we fall out of love with poker even while we're still playing. You
Right.
don't want to have as much volume.
You know,
so-
from someone who runs a room, it's so bizarre. Like, they sound so, I'm not even being dramatic. I see it in you guys' eyes. I can see it. I can see it through periods of time where I'm like, I tell my customers sometimes in the room, and I think like that's what makes me probably different, like more.
Sorry.
More
the
like-
hard-rated alcoholic lemon limes that are
It
coming in.
is hard, right? It's for good though.
Yeah,
But
pretty good.
when you see it in someone's eyes, it's like super sad. Where you're like, you know what? I literally tell people maybe just take a breather.
Yeah.
Take a breather, because it's a super hard profession. I think I don't know about anybody else in your personal life, your friends pre this or whatever, but you kind of look at it on social media and you're like, oh yeah, it's so hard. You have to go to Vegas for 10 weeks. And I'm like, it's ropeable. You paid 16-hour days, grueling,
Yeah.
just to bubble and have to get up at 9 a.m. and do it all again. And once like online shut down, do you feel as though a lot of people kind of lost their...
Yeah, there was an interesting trajectory between that and I think like the very early adopters of crypto. Like
Okay.
I think that's where you lost most of the professional poker players to at that specific time around. I think the Australian ban was like 2016. So we still had some options, you know, once PokerStars came back and bought Full Tilt. Thankfully got all that money back. It was a
Yeah.
great day.
down.
Withdraw!
Oh, babe, I was
Withdraw!
actually
Thanks, Chew. I don't need any more backing.
I was actually in Macau playing the ACOP when that happened, and I was like, "Oh my god!" So I didn't. It was funny with the laissez-fairness in which I didn't withdraw immediately. Actually, after all,
That's
of
his
that.
law degree.
Yeah,
2
you know,
semesters in, it was paid for in itself. Laissez-faire. You know?
You know, I was like, "Okay, I'll do this next week." It's
Yeah.
not like there's been some
Such a
dramatic
poker
issue
player
for the last
approach.
few years. Yeah, and yeah, it's very interesting to look back on. I guess a lot of that now.
What do your... I went back through your... I was like... The best part about this podcast is like I'm like a full stalker. Like I am definitely Joe from you.
Oh,
and
you're
I,
looking at the
I have a-
downswings parts as
Oh my
well?
god, I was like stalking you so much, and I'm like, I was looking at, I was showing a photo to Will, and I was like, Didier pulled bare boards. Your exes are so hot. But anyhow, when you had like college, they're very good looking. But when you had college friends and stuff, and like even people, your family and friends, what do you tell people you do now?
Okay.
And have you kind of warped your life? I feel like when we get into poker, our lives like transpire over time without us knowing it. Where now most of our closest friends and most of our closest people are poker related. But then I go home and my mom works in a home with people with Alzheimer's, which is fine because like she tells them 10 times a day anyhow. But she's probably like, my daughter works in poker, and they're like, what? Your daughter does cards? Do you have much of that, or do you just be like...
Before you answer, she wanted to ask this question: Are your parents proud or ashamed? That's what she was. I said you can't ask if they're ashamed of you for playing poker.
Well, it's almost interesting because I think that's like a genuine, it's not to say the same word, but a genuine genesis of how it happened because, you know, once online in the US got banned, found my way to keep playing. Nothing really happened for a few years. got heads up for a bracelet, was on ESPN for the first time, and Mum sent me this text message. And up until then, it was like end of 2014. It was WSOP Australia.
But it doesn't matter. It's there's such moments where you're like, holy shit.
I was streaming on ESPN online, and Mum sent me this message. It must have been like 2 p.m. and she was just like, "This is the earliest I've ever opened a bottle of wine. Good luck." And since then they've been very keen to see how things go. I think sort of because the only thing they'd seen was maybe that 2009 main event final table, a little bit of. So then it's like the natural progression. Oh, maybe he's doing something similar. So that definitely helped, and they've been such a wonderful emotional support, over the years. And you talk about like losing. Obviously, we all go through the troughs, and had a lot of troughs at Poker Palace in particular over the years, like going deep and not getting the results like I felt like I deserved. And
you so deserved. It's pretty spinny out where I obviously wrote my introductory speech, which was pretty verbatim what I had said in your winner's post. But what literally floored me was, I remember you messaged me being like, I can't believe this is the first time you've wrote a winner's post to me. And I was like, holy fucking shit. Because it really
I had a long period of
that.
being due, and then I think my friends were like, he's still due. Like they were almost exhausted by it. And you think about the people who I've grown up with, overdue is the correct answer. No one should really be as blessed as I am to have the ability to talk to Adrian or Nielsen or Jono about a hand history, or Kale and stuff like that. And
so
have the delay in results that I probably had.
So I was going to word it in a way where, you know me, I mean it with like pure love, and there's no other way I can word it other than it takes a very strong character to be happy for your friends.
Yeah.
When you're both competing in the same industry, when you're both the same people, when you both started at the same rate, I genuinely know in my heart and soul, Didier, that you are certainly the type of person. I touched on this recently with a different topic. You clap for everybody.
Yeah.
I really mean that. Didier is genuinely everybody's biggest fan. He claps for everybody. You do. You're so happy for people when they do well. But sometimes that has to get a little bit hard, in the sense of if you're going through a period where you're putting in the time and you're putting in the effort and you're working, everybody is telling you, because it's true, you are one of the best. And then you stand on the sidelines and you see somebody who you love so much, who definitely deserves also where he's at. But does it ever get a little bit difficult when you see some of your friends make worldwide titles and that's all you want? Like when you're a poker player, I think you ask any poker player what you want, they want the final table at the WSOP.
Yeah. I always wake up and when I'm in the shower, I visualize my own success. I don't worry about other people. And I think at some point I must have just really enjoyed all the parties afterwards when all my friends were winning all those amounts of titles, But genuinely, no, I've never felt like the sense of like jealousy. Maybe I'm supposed to have, but I honestly, genuinely have never felt about it like as a competitive thing. Like even when someone is on the same table, like Yida most of the time these days.
That's how I'm so sure that your day will come. No, I'm so serious, because when APO did well this year, my mom, like one of the first things my mom said to me is like, that is genuinely how I try and live my life, where I'm like, you clap for everybody else, it will be your day.
Yeah, I mean, you have to understand variance and be very humble about it, because, I had a very long swing where not much really went my way. And I wanted to go back to what I said, like, I felt like I deserved better. And then once you learn more about ego, generally speaking, and knowing that you don't deserve anything, you realize that, well, then it just should come, actually, right? I look at some of the younger players' stories and I see them going through, like, the same sort of, like, troughs as I do. This will be a really random mention, actually, but Fletcher Lowe. I saw his story.
Fletcher who?
Fletcher Lowe. He plays. Sorry. Sorry.
I love his stories. We were talking
about
him.
Forgive me, wrong
at
surname.
lunch.
Yeah, Fletcher Smith. I was talking about one of my personal friends, Fletcher.
Right.
Fletcher Smith. I saw one of his stories, and he looked like I was having a tough time at Kings this week, and I was like, I felt that exact same way at Poker Palace when I was, about the same age, and it's so tough for people to like work hard at this game and feel like they're just not getting anything back. Yeah. Now, when I look at myself, I think I wasn't working anywhere near as hard as some of the kids, do these days. It's so encouraging to see that like next generation coming up, the Malcolm Trainers, the Cooper Felthams, the Liam Jahus, the Lachlan Crillies, Fletcher, a couple of other guys who I don't know as well. But these guys are all whacking out the GTO wizard, and they're trying really hard to study it, varying rates. And
Malcolm's day will come for sure.
Oh, Malcolm, he's due, mate. He's due.
Any
You'll get there
day
one
now.
day.
But do you think did anything change in you? So obviously, you were like all your friends were really successful, and then obviously you've been playing live for a few years to the higher stakes. And then you had like an 18-month period where you won R-Mark only high roller, you chopped or won the
TLPT.
5K,
Yeah.
It's been a good 12 months.
Centurion, then you played the 10K, and it's like just an 18-month period. You finally got those results.
Yeah.
Everyone else was kind of like, well, obviously, like it was coming as Didier. But did anything change? Did you change anything, or did?
I think it's due to like those troughs that I referred to. I went through like the darkest moment in my life around like the time the pandemic was kicking in, which to be fair was actually a good excuse for me personally, because I had so much going not the right way in my life. I know people will take this at different valuations, but I lost my 2 cats.
We don't. We have our dog, and no, anybody who's watching this who has a pet, absolutely not. Didier, they are a family member, and arguably the best family member.
Yeah. I took them through cancer when they were the age of 18. I had them since I was in 3rd grade. They moved out of home with me. They were just my best friends, and I being an only child, they're your brothers basically, and I just didn't take it well at all. And then the girl who I cared about the most in the world didn't feel the same way about me. All of it just surmised in like a moment where I was sitting in the bath and like, I really just don't think I'm gonna get back to live poker. And it's not like like I don't think I can do it. It's like I literally physically don't know if I can actually play anything else other than online poker at the moment. And then like, thank God Adrian came second in the WSOP main event.
What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. You know me, I'm partial to a Vegas story.
All right, you have like Queens, bro. Let's go. Tripled it off with an overbet on the river, and he folded pocket kings, and I just showed him the hand, and he like had this diamond encrusted Bose headset, and like just like threw it across the felt like towards me. One of the little things like felt like it was almost popping out as a result, and I was like, oh, okay.
Chill, bro.